There is a surprising new weapon in the battle to preserve our shores from rising sea levels and increasingly severe storms. Diana Olick has the details now in her continuing series on the rising risks to real estate.
At Manhattan's iconic Gramercy Tavern, where the menu celebrates locally sourced, sustainable food, something transformational is going on in the trash. Gramercy Tavern is one of more than 70 New York area restaurants donating their wholly eaten half shells to help repopulate the oyster reefs in New York Harbor.
When I learned a little bit more about their technique, then they had me hooked.
Oyster reefs are natural barriers that protect shorelines from erosion, rising tides, and increasingly severe storm surge. They knock down the height and force of waves, but they've been decimated by a century of over-harvesting and worsening water quality.
We've seen a loss of almost 80% of oysters in estuaries worldwide.
University of North Carolina professor Antonio Rodriguez studies oyster reef growth. He says the best way to protect the billions of dollars worth of coastal real estate from the effects of climate change is to go back to nature.
The goal is to keep people safe, keep their property intact, and sometimes making your environment more natural and learning from the way the environment was before we developed it. Those are the best techniques.
Oyster reefs are now being rehabbed from Massachusetts to Texas in projects by universities, local municipalities, the U.S. Navy, and Air Force.
This is the oyster hatchery of the New York Harbor School, and it's where Billion Oyster Project grows all of our oysters.
The Billion Oyster Project is one of the most ambitious. A twist on farm to table, it's table to farm, with a $3.5 million annual budget funded in part by state and federal grants from Superstorm Sandy. It collects 10,000 pounds of discarded restaurant shells per week, brings them to Governor's Island to cure for a year, then puts them in a hatchery where they spawn oyster larvae.
So right here you can see 2 baby oysters. Once Sandy happened, in the aftermath of that, we realized just how valuable oyster reefs in New York Harbor could be. New York Harbor used to have over 200,000 acres of oyster reefs protecting the shoreline, and that population is virtually extinct.
So our natural barriers to storm surge are gone.
Correct.
And you're telling me that this big old pile of oyster shells is going to save us?
I don't know, save us, but it should absolutely help.
The goal is to place 1 billion live oysters across 100 acres of reefs by 2035, bag by bag. In order to receive federal funding, projects like Billion Oyster had to prove that not only were they making the shorelines more resilient, but they were creating social resilience. That is, bringing even the largest communities together to protect their own real estate.
We want to engage communities everywhere because that's actually how you get long-standing change, right? If the community and the people that live there and work there are actively involved in stewarding their local environment.
We're lucky to live and work in New York City, where we have access to some of the freshest and the best, the widest variety of species anywhere in the world. But with that comes a responsibility of the choices that we make.
For Nightly Business Report, I'm Diana Olick on Governor's Island in New York.